here with the PC onboarding module on course design. Our objective here is very simple. By the end of this module, you will know how to design your courses using the backward design model, a method that will ensure that your courses are all focused laser-like on clear learning objectives. Course designers sometimes refer to the twin sins of teaching. The first is teaching that's oriented around activities. Now, don't get me wrong, activities are good. We want students to be active learners. But sometimes teachers get so into the grind and the routine of teaching that they just throw activities at students just to keep them busy, and they lose track of why we're doing those activities or what students are supposed to get out of those activities in terms of learning objectives. So, activities are good, but don't design your courses just with the idea that, well, I gotta have them busy every week. Think about why you want them to be doing activities, rather than just the activities themselves. The second sin of teaching is teaching that's oriented too much toward coverage, meaning covering every chapter in the book, or covering every president of the United States, or every decade of the Renaissance, or some other arbitrary collection of chunks of knowledge. With coverage based on chapters, probably the most frequent form of this error we see, it's okay to have a textbook. We like textbooks. But the textbook is meant to be a resource, not a syllabus. The fact that your textbook has 30 chapters in it should never dictate to you that you have to cover 30 chapters just because the book says so. Your teaching should focus on why we're teaching certain things or what we're trying to teach. And then you should be selective about the chapters that you go over to cover that information. So avoid those two twin sins of activity-oriented teaching and coverage-oriented teaching, and think more about what you really want to teach and why you want to teach it. Another frequent sin in teaching is teaching without design, going in there and winging it. Now, some people would say that if you're a professor, if you've got a doctorate in your field, that you should be smart enough that you could walk into any room and without any preparation say some pretty brilliant and instructive things about your field, things that people could learn from. However, really teaching, really professing is not just a matter of walking in and telling people all that you know. Good teaching and professing is about empowering other people to gain and to use expertise. That takes a little more planning than just coming in and doing a quick extemporaneous speech and sounding smart. One professor wrote that when he started teaching, one of his mentors said, "You'll warrant the title of professor when you discover what you're willing to profess." And this instructor at first thought that just meant, oh, well, I need to really plan out what I'm going to say. I need to know the things I'm going to talk about. But he said, and I'll quote here, "Over time, I've come to understand that the most important professing I do as a teacher involves my thoughtful choice of reading material, assignments, activities, and most of all, learning objectives." Okay? So real professing isn't just saying things, it's designing what we would say and what we would have others do in order to gain expertise themselves. Okay? And that's a complicated process. So I want you to remember, good design, planning out what you're going to do in your course, not just walking in and saying things, good design influences good teaching and will produce better results for your students. Good course design really is student-centered. You're focused on what the students are going to do. So instead of, when you sit down to plan your course, instead of asking yourself, well, what are we going to do? What am I going to cover? Try to avoid those teacher-centered questions and instead focus on these three student-centered questions. First of all, first thing you want to ask when you're designing your course is, what do students need to know? Then ask yourself, how will we know if students know it? Then your third big question in designing your course should be, what will students do to learn the things that we've set out? Those three questions map out the backward design model for course design. Those three questions will translate into the three big things you should plan out for your courses. First of all, The question of what do students need to know? Well, that defines your objectives, the knowledge and the skills that you want every student to have, or that you think every student would have, by the time they finish your course. Once you've got those objectives, kind of that big picture of what students should know and be able to do when the course is done, then you need to ask yourself, how would I measure that? How will I know if students know those things and can do those things? That second question will form your assessments, the measurements that you will make to see if you're meeting the objectives for the course. And then the third question, what will students do to learn it? After you've set your big picture objectives, and after you've defined, well, how will I measure these things? What assessments, what tools will I use to measure progress toward those objectives? Then you can start planning the instructional activities. Like I said, the things students will do in the class, how you'll interact with them, all of the activities that will happen to move students toward those learning objectives. That is the backward design model for designing your course. Now, there are different ways to represent this backward design model. We like to draw it as a triangle with your objectives at the top, then leading to your creation of your assessments, which then leads to the creation of your instructional activities. You can represent it as a line, as a triangle, whatever works. But I want to note, it's not a strictly linear one-way process. Any node in this triangle can inform another node in this triangle. For instance, you might start out by designing your objectives, and then you make your assessments, and then you make your instructional activities to all align in that process. But then when you deploy the course and it hits students, just like any battle plans, they don't survive first contact with the enemy or the freshman class, you might give your assessments and find, holy cow, I was teaching dosages for my major objectives, but the students lack some math literacy that allow them to do that right. So based on my assessments and seeing how poorly they performed on that, maybe I need to go back and do an objective on math literacy to ensure that my other objectives are supported. That could happen. You could do a test and it could make you want to change your objectives. Or you might do a certain activity in class and find it's really successful, but you didn't actually assess everything that was discussed in that activity. And so maybe you'll change your assessment based on the good experience you had with your instruction. These nodes can all inform each other in this model. All we're saying is that when you start, new course, new semester, whatever, when you start, if you treat the backward design triangle as your template, that can help you get going and stay focused on all of your educational objectives. Start with the objectives, then form assessments, then do your instructional activities, design them, and then constantly iterate those things among each other as you deploy the course and as you see how things actually work with your students.